In Venezuela, President Nicolas Maduro announced the enactment of the law in defense of the Guayana-Esequiba. In Argentina, thousands of employees and former public sector workers mobilized on Wednesday in rejection of the massive layoffs ordered by the government of President Javier Milei. And the Iranian representation to the United Nations Organization Security Council denounced that the United States is responsible for all the crimes committed by Israel in the Middle East. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro announced the enactment of the law in defense of the Guayana-Esequiba. The ceremony was held on Wednesday at the elliptic hall of the National Assembly. During his speech, President Maduro went over all the process leading to the enactment of the law and praised the Venezuelan people and the social organizations for their active participation in that process. Maduro also reiterated that the unwavering right of the Venezuelans over the Essequibo territory, as clearly expressed during the referendum held in December 2023, and stressed the binding nature of the approved law for all Venezuelans. In another, President Maduro spoke of when he met with the President of Guyana with the documents providing their possession with respect of the territory of Essequibo and how they will never recognize the arbitral award.
And face to face we showed them. We showed to the President of Guyana the historical documents that sustain our position, of how the arbitrary award of the 1899 is illegal, and Venezuela, on the basis of international law, does not recognize it. In the framework of the Geneva Agreement, it does not recognize that arbitrary award and will never do so, because it's part of the colonial right, of the old colonial right, completely out of date.
In another part of his speech, President Maduro also mentioned the inspiration and teaching from the founding fathers of the Venezuelan nation to struggle for the country's sovereignty and to wage the definitive fight to recover the Guayana-Esequiba.
They gave us this land. They gave us our identity. They gave us our character. They gave us a vision of a great homeland, and they gave us the Guayana in its entirety.
In this context, President Maduro also denounced the presence of CIA stations in the Guayana-Esequiba territory.
The fifth moment of the conspiracy against Venezuela, which is the moment of their offensive, of ExxonMobil, the South Command, because President Irfan does not rule Guyana. Guyana is ruled by the South Command, the CIA, and the ExxonMobil. I am not overreacting this. They control Congress, they control the parties, both the ruling parties and the opposition. They control the government as a whole. They completely control the defense forces of Guyana, the police. And we have proved information, constructed information in the territory of Guayana-Esequiba on the temporary administration of Guyana. They have created secret military bases of the South Command, military bases of the U.S. South Command, bases of the CIA, to prepare aggressions against the people of the region, to prepare aggressions against the people of the south and east of Venezuela, and to prepare for escalated tensions against Venezuela. That's why we must always be ready, with our guards up, with our morale up high, to defend the right of the homeland of Venezuela and its national territory.
In Argentina, thousands of employees and former public sector workers mobilized on Wednesday in rejection of the massive layoffs ordered by the government of President Javier Milei. The government confirmed that more than 15,000 public sector employees were dismissed when their contracts were terminated on March 31st. The protesters accused the head of state of breaking the Argentine legal system and say that causing massive layoffs in the state is to suppress fundamental rights. They also pointed out that the dismissal of so many workers to such an extent that even entire delegations have to close seriously restricts the right to social security. The presidential spokesman Manuel Adorni argued that unnecessary personnel were dismissed while the employees were barely notified about their employment situation. Educators in Costa Rica will take to the streets on Wednesday to claim back payments for different concepts, among them the retroactive cost of living for the period 2020 to 2023. Said settlement was scheduled for April 1st. However, the Ministry of Finance assured that through a statement that the deposit had been made to 39,000 civil servants who were pending. The demonstrations will arrive at the offices of the Ministry of Public Education and will then continue the route to the Ministry of Finance, explained the union associations. The president of Teachers and Secondary Education, Vivian Chavez, also explained that they are joining other union organizations in the march due to the non-payment of the cost of living increase. The Presidential Transition Council in Haiti is still on hold due to the disagreements and demands of its members, a fact that delays the political reorganization of the Caribbean country. The members of the opposition party committed to development denounced the delay in the political reorganization due to the refusal of the supporters of the former Prime Minister Ariel Henry to install the Presidential Transition Council. The opposition party gave 72 hours to publish the decree on the appointment of the members of said council, or they will summon their supporters to take to the streets again. Likewise, the Young Progressive Leaders Party proposed two plans in order to achieve the political reordering of the Caribbean island through the holding of general elections and the promotion of the participation of new actors in the national politics. Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel attended Wednesday the opening of the second trade fair for transportation and logistics. The event hosts national and foreign professionals of the sector who will be able to identify business opportunities in Cuba and consolidate existing ones. Among the Cuban ministry's main objectives are to encourage the development of economic stakeholders, promote foreign direct investment, foster international cooperation, attract financing for infrastructure, as well as to expand the material supply networks and modernize the national industry. The event will last until next Friday, April 5th. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. All the stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. The Iranian representation to the United Nations Organization Security Council denounced that the United States is responsible for all the crimes committed by Israel in the Middle East. Within the framework of an emergency meeting held at the Security Council on the Israeli attack on the Iranian embassy in Syria, the Deputy Permanent Representative of Iran to the United Nations, Sarah Ershadi, pointed out that Israel's crime clearly violated the founding charter of the United Nations, international law, and the inviolability of diplomatic rights and consular premises. He also reiterated that the attacks carried out by Israel are absolutely unacceptable and must stop. The Iranian representatives to the United Nations denounced that such actions, including its genocidal operation in Gaza, will increasingly escalate the current regional conflict and constitute a constant threat to peace in the Middle East. From Belgium, Canadian Foreign Minister called for a full investigation into the Israeli occupation army strike against the Gaza Strip that killed 7 humanitarian workers, including a Canadian citizen. This attack represents the latest Israeli military action to hit humanitarian efforts in the besieged Palestinian territory. At the NATO summit in Brussels, the Foreign Affairs Minister of Canada, Melanie Joly, told reporters that Israel needs to respect international humanitarian law, and the Canadian government will make sure of that. After the said airstrike, the charity World Central Kitchen was immediately pausing operations in the region, delivering a blow to the recently opened sea route for food aid.
So, unfortunately, a Canadian was killed in the IDF strike that targeted humanitarian workers from World Kitchen. My deepest condolences to their loved ones and family members. We call for a full investigation. We want to make sure that Israel looks directly into this issue. I've reached out last night to Israel Katz, my Israeli counterpart, on this very issue. Israel needs to respect international humanitarian law, and we will make sure that that is the case. Thank you.
Leaders of the different resistance movements in the Middle East assured that they are closer to victory in the face of the continuous Israeli attacks against the Palestinian people. In his speech to the senior leaders of the region on the International Day of Al-Quds, Hezbollah Secretary General Sayed Hassan Nasrallah stressed the importance of continuous work, steadfastness and resistance to achieve victory for Gaza. In this regard, other leaders agreed that the United States government is a clear partner of Israel for supporting the crimes being carried out in the occupied territories in the region. At the same time, they maintain that the International Day of Al-Quds is a milestone that marks the strengthening of unity of the peoples, the fighters, and their liberation goals. In Israel, anti-government protests gathered in front of the parliament in Jerusalem to demand the removal from office of Benjamin Netanyahu, an agreement for the release of hostages in Gaza. Carrying torches and posters, thousands of demonstrators marched from the Knesset to the Prime Minister's residence on Tuesday, calling for new elections in the country. Local media reported that there were clashes between police officers and demonstrators, some of whom were arrested. The protest is mainly made up of relatives and friends of people who are currently detained in the Gaza Strip.
The hostages are the first target, and that will be victory. We tell the government that all this useless, unproductive talk and tone about a total victory are nonsense. There will be no total victory. The only victory we can have is the victory of the spirit, that we remain a human and democratic country. We don't want revenge, we don't want to kill Palestinians, we don't want hunger in Gaza, we want a ceasefire that will bring the hostages. We want the re-establishment of the State of Israel.
In Russia, the government called on the security services to strengthen their preparedness and take measures against the terrorist activities of the Kyiv regime. The Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov assured that in the face of terrorist attacks by the Ukrainian army, appropriate measures will be taken in terms of increased mobilization and preparedness to ensure greater security following a drone attack on the Republic of Tatarstan. Local authorities reported that industrial enterprises in the area of Volga were attacked by Ukrainian drones in the last hours, causing at least 14 injured persons. Both attacked cities are located more than 1,000 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. We have a final short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Uganda's Constitutional Court on Wednesday refused to annul or suspend an anti-homosexuality law that includes the death penalty for certain same-sex acts, but voided some provisions it said are inconsistent with certain fundamental human rights. The legislation adopted in May last year is among the world's harshest anti-LGBTQ laws and has drawn condemnation from rights campaigners and sanctions from Western nations. Activists say the law has unleashed a torrent of abuse against LGBTQ people, including torture, rape, arrest, and eviction. In his reading and on behalf of the jury, Judge Richard Butera declined to strike down the Anti-Homosexuality Law 2023 in its entirety, stating that a permanent injunction against its enforcement would not be granted. However, the court struck down certain sections that were considered inconsistent with rights to health, privacy, and freedom of religion.
The petitioners sought a myriad of remedies that essentially call for the nullification of the entire Anti-Homosexuality Act 2023. Having heard as we have in the body of the judgment, we decline to nullify the Anti-Homosexuality Act 2023 in its entirety. Neither would we grant a permanent injunction against its enforcement.
Ugandan lawyer Nicolas Opoku emphasized that the court was based on the moral values of the society, but at the same time, by its decision, supported the discrimination of LGBTQ people in the country.
The court substantially upheld the vast majority of the sections of the Anti-Homosexuality Act in Uganda. The court said the act does not provide for discrimination, doesn't offend the freedom of expression, doesn't offend the freedom of privacy, and does not restrict the right of religion to practice one's faith. The court essentially said that the law is justified insofar as it discriminates against LGBTI people, as far as it denies them a right to participate in the governance of this country. They said those restrictions are proportional. And in doing so, the court relied on public sentiments. The court relied on what it calls moral values of this society. And the court, by its decision, simply endorsed the discrimination of LGBTI individuals in this country.
The International Organization for Migration, IOM, denounced new acts of vandalism and violence by paramilitary groups in Sudan. The international body reported that at least 21 people were killed during the actions that took place over the weekend, leaving dozens of people wounded. It detailed that clashes that took place in the city of El Fasher and in the north of Darfur provoked the displacement of its inhabitants. The organization also reported that the Sudanese army forces prevented a bombardment against their positions in the area of Al-Awash, belonging to the city of Al-Dawim, in the state of White Nile. Nearly 1,000 people were trapped in the mountains of China's Taroko National Park after an earthquake of over 7 magnitude. The Taiwanese authorities informed that at the earthquake's moment, there were more than 654 people in the park, including tourists and employees. For this reason, they decided to keep the park closed for an indefinite time while the work of the mountaineering team continues to search and rescue the victims. It should be noted that the government confirmed the death of 10 people and more than 900 injured during the earthquake. We move on to the world of sports. The Chilean scooter Diego Parra becomes the 19th classified from his country to the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. At only 16 years old, the athlete achieved an extraordinary Olympic qualification to Paris 2024 after being crowned champion in the 10-meter air pistol in the Pan American shooting qualifier in Buenos Aires. Parra achieved 244.2 points to eliminate his rivals, gold medalist in the Pan American Games of Santiago 2023, also beating the Brazilian Olympic medalist Felipe Almeida, who silver in Rio 2016. In this way, the young Chilean achieved the only available space heading to Paris 2024, being the 19th classified of his country and the youngest until now. And the Mexican women's team won a gold prize in the American Sports Shooting Championship in Argentina. The national sports shooting selected teams Alejandra Zavala Vázquez, André Ibarra Miranda, and Alejandra Cervantes Rodriguez achieved the gold medal in the women's team 10 meters air pistol test during the start of the 14th American Rifle and Pistol Championships that takes place in Buenos Aires. The tricolor group led the competition with a score of 1,697 to 33-7 above the Ecuador team made up of Diana Durango, Andrea Perez, and Sofia Padilla, who added 1,697